In July, the Institute for Addiction Study received an email from Tricia Lethko, an instructor at Cal State Northridge, concerning a question a student had in one of her addiction classes. Tricia directed her student's question to Dr. Kevin McCauley, one of the Institute for Addiction Study principal members. Tricia writes, "I continue to show all of my students in my addiction classes at Cal State Northridge Pleasure Unwoven. I have them write papers, and one of my students asked a question that had me trying to find the best answer." Note, Pleasure Unwoven is a film created by the Institute for Addiction Study where Dr. McCauley makes the case for addiction being a disease. We thought you might be interested in hearing the students' questions and Dr. McCauley's responses. I view addiction as a disease, but am conflicted with how society should go about recovery. If addiction is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, then how can an individual go through recovery and sustain from drugs without treatment that realigns the chemical balance in the brain? How can mental health professionals or addiction support groups help other individuals through recovery without chemical realignment? Based on the film's perspective, addiction is a disease, not a choice. How would treatment be administered to the public without the use of drugs to realign the brain's chemistry? Recovery for addiction is a complex issue, and treatment for addiction can take many forms. Treatment can include addiction support groups, motivational interviewing, and psychotherapy and pharmacology treatment. Based on the various methods of treatment, I assume that recovery from addiction is far more complex and diverse than assumed. Dr. McCauley responds, "I think you framed the phenomenon of recovery quite well, and there are many answers to your questions already present in what you've written. People establish their recovery and maintain it by engaging in the practices that are known to support brain healing. For some people seeking recovery, this involves treatment such as detoxification, medications such as buprenorphine and naltrexone, and engage in therapies such as MI, CBT, or DBT, delivered by mental health care providers. Other people seeking recovery discontinue their problematic alcohol and drug use over time without treatment. But many of these people change their peers from those who still use drugs to those who do not, obtain safe housing out of high-risk neighborhoods, and go back to school and seek satisfying jobs. Quite often, they find their path into recovery quite by chance and just by looking. All of these practices, treatment or not, obtained formally or not, can realign neurochemical imbalances and support other neural processes that are consistent with recovery. I agree with you that recovery from addiction is complex and that there are as many paths into recovery as there are people who recover. Mental health professionals can support recovery by appreciating the diversity of paths into recovery and by linking their patients with the recovery resources that fit their needs and values. Your words are important, and how should society go about recovery? I think there are two forms of taking responsibility that lead to recovery: individual and societal. The more the person with addiction rejects offers of treatment, sober housing, and vocational training, the more they cement their addiction in place. But the more we, as a society, restrict access to treatment, housing, and employment for people suffering from addiction, the more we make the individual's recovery less likely. So there is a shared responsibility in supporting responsibility. In active addiction, a person may not be able to make good choices, but as a person progresses in their recovery, they are better able to make healthier choices. The disease of addiction goes into remission, and that individual's power of choice returns. But most people take responsibility for their recovery to the extent that they know how and are supported in doing so. In the description, you will find direct links to our films entitled Pleasure Unwoven and Memo to Self. There is a wealth of valuable and accurate information concerning the disease of addiction in these award-winning films. If you have not seen them, you owe it to yourself to discover why thousands of people have benefited from these landmark films.